Pledge of Allegiance by yours truly.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Larkey. Councilmember White.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson.
Here.
Councilmember Pryan.
Here.
Councilmember Davidson.
Here.
Councilmember Lawson.
Here.
Councilmember Richardson.
Here.
Councilmember McCallum.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
We have a quorum. Items for review and discussion. Number 1, fiscal year 2026 capital budget. Who's up?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I get started, I just want to let you know that over the past couple of months, department heads have been working diligently on getting us their 5-year capital improvements. And Joe and I, in the last couple of weeks, have gone through that. We've moved some items to the next fiscal year, and then we've also cut some things. So bringing this to you tonight, we're not saying that this is the final product, but we are presenting this to you, and then we'll work on the operations budget, and at the end see really what fits at the end for the entire fiscal year. So we're going to start with general fund. City Hall, we're going to do a garbage can containment. Right now we have got some garbage cans sitting out there, and we're not in compliance with city code. So we obviously want to be in compliance with that, so we've got that in the budget to do. We have an HVAC unit at City Hall that needs to be replaced. So we're going to do that. We don't want to be hot in the summertime when that comes around. Over at the annex, there's some AV equipment that's needed in here, and I've got those items listed out. I won't word it or read it verbatim to you. You guys can do that. But there's a little over $18,000 to be able to do that this next year.
Hey, Casey, if you wouldn't mind, when we go through each slide, if you want to give everybody a second to kind of comprehend what we're saying, what we're
Yes.
doing, and then if they have any questions at that point, that way we can kind of take it a slide by slide and not have to
can
go
do
back
that.
and forth.
I am so sorry. I will say that I was asked, how long is this going to be? And I said 10, 15 minutes. So I will slow down. I'm sorry.
Please.
Yes.
Are we, I know that you want to do a containment. Have we thought about doing a recycling dumpster as well?
Yes.
Is that something that we?
Yep.
Yeah. So we could do a trash and a recycling thing? Okay.
We'll have both.
All right.
So the AV equipment for the council chambers. We did have some of this in the budget last year, so we've kind of split it between the last year and the next year, or this year and the next year. We do have some upgrades out here in the annex lobby that the staff wants to do. With the new upgrade in software, they're going to get some iPads, some new chairs, some tables to help with the customer service aspect out there. So, yes.
This microphone seems like it works pretty good. Does it not?
Especially when you turn them on.
Well, so IT does believe that we need some upgrades in here. So if you guys don't think that we need these upgrades, you can decide that we don't, but
I'm not a microphone expert. I'm not trying to suggest I am.
Nope.
I just was trying to understand because from the layman's perspective, it looks like it is okay.
I made that point last year, and they've brought it back to me this year. So they do believe that we do need some upgrades in here.
Alrighty.
And I can further explore that for you if you'd like.
Sure.
Okay, I can do that. Any questions about, yes, sir?
I'm talking about in here, not the microphone, so. If we're going to be doing some things, it'd be nice if we had some electricity so we don't have to run extension cords to hook our phones into.
Okay.
I'd be more for that than, hook our computers into. I'd be more for that than, I always
Outlets.
turn my mic on. So.
Okay. I think that, have we hired someone in Public Works that has a little bit of electrician background? Oh, you did.
Good
I'm
answer.
sorry, it was Parks. So, obviously, they would have to be licensed, to do that work. So we can look into that for you.
And what is a DSP?
Good question.
Hey, Jordan, you don't know either? Okay,
Okay, I don't feel silly now.
okay. I will get the answer to that question for you, okay?
I bet it's displays. Display or displays.
Could be. I apologize for not knowing the answer to that.
I don't feel silly now, so we're all right.
We're all
I know
silly
you'll
t-
get it to us.
We're all silly together, I suppose. Any other questions on this slide?
It's probably a digital signal processor. Just gonna throw
Ooh.
that out there.
Look at you.
Like everybody else could have.
Any other questions on this slide?
I do want to point out that the other upgrades for the annex lobby, I have to do a lot with our interaction with the public, especially if they come in and they need to do, so, we've moved everything online as far as our, permitting and that type of thing. So if someone wants to come in and still, and we need to help them, we can give them an iPad, say, here, walk them through, here's where you would do it online, and it gives them a place to sit down and go ahead and do that, whatever they need to do and get done, and it provides that level of customer service in-house, so we don't have to say, you can do that online, and why don't you go home and do that online, or go somewhere else and do that online, and we can just do it right there and then. Thank you.
Next, in community development, I'm going to let Matt speak a little bit to this. I know that he's talked about this in the past, but if I've got a department head here that can speak more eloquently than I can, I'm going to let him do it. So go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, so this is actually currently in the FY25 budget for 100,000. So this would just be a carryover. With the comp plan update wrapping up a few months later than expected, we don't anticipate starting the actual UDC update until March or April. So we more than likely may not use any of the $100,000 in this budget. So we're asking to roll it over and add $25,000 to that, just to be able to provide the best development code update that we can. Depending on how the scope of work comes out, we may not need to utilize all that, but we just want to have that cushion there to be able to utilize it as needed.
All right, I think this is a quick question. Is this money primarily for the consulting team then? This isn't like, or is there something else?
It is all for the consulting team,
Okay.
which would potentially include some sub-consultants that specialize in certain areas within the development code update, as well as a legal review as well.
Any other questions? Okay. Next, we've got Public Works Engineering. The engineering does sit in general fund. So we've got some survey equipment that Greg is asking for $45,000. If anybody has any questions about that. Okay. We're going to move on to fire. John brought his laptop with him in case you guys have any questions that he can't answer off the top of his head, but he should be able to. So right now we've got the station alerting system in there. I've put a lot of descriptions and benefits on the screen for you. I'll let you guys read that, and if you have any questions about what this system does, please ask. Yep.
See, I told you. I always turn it on. So, by doing this, how much benefit is there what we currently have? Because I can't read all of that because of the glare and stuff.
Here's what it does in short, and we have a system already. It was a homemade system by Kaminko Radio Systems that helps us with all our other radio needs, and so it was a home designed, home built system. And what it does is that it alerts each station when they have a call, instead of listening to an open radio all the time, in particular at night, it lets them go on what's called a silent watch, and so that it gently turns on lights and it makes enough noise to wake them up to get them the call so that they know that they need to go. The system that's in there it's 10 years old. They're kind of slated to go for 10 years. And the fact that it was a homemade system that really everybody else is phasing out, they don't have the parts. And so the one thing about that system that it also, we're kind of trying to be much more cognizant of our health and the shock that we put to our system. So super loud bells, super bright lights all at the same time tend to boost your heart rate and cause you, some ongoing issues in the future. So this is a system that's better tailored to slowly ramp up, wake people up, gets us to the calls quicker, and so that we know that the proper people are getting the information. These are kind of like anything else. When you talk about electronics and technology, we could go as far and deep. These things, we're only kind of going with a system that has lights within the bedrooms, things, the speakers that are going to make noise and wake them up. We'll probably put a timer. It puts a timer on the front door, so when they walk into the trucks, they'll know exactly how much time's elapsed, because we have time standards that we want to meet to get in or out. But you could integrate this thing into literally everything. Pop up on the TV. It'll turn your stove off for you if the stove's on. But we're not opting for those sorts of things. But they're pretty in depth.
And John, this new system will integrate with the new CAD, whereas
Yes, so
the
it will better
current
perform with the
system.
new CAD as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, like I say, the bottom line is, we're even at Station 1 right now, we've had them out over the last couple weeks, and they're having trouble making it even work. So they've all been sleeping with radios full blast to make sure they don't sleep through a call.
My initial response to this was, I don't think this is a need, it's more of a want, but the more I listen to the explanation of what it is and how it works, the last thing we would want is to have an important call come through and the system fails and our folks aren't alerted quickly enough and we can't get to the call. So I would think this is a pretty important component to what we do with fire safety.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Okay. We'll continue with fire. We've got some facility improvements. John had about a little over $400,000 that he was asking for FY26, so we had some discussions, and he chose to start with some bathroom remodels. Both the male and female bathroom need to be remodeled. There's some mold in there, and they're at Station 1, and they're pretty big facilities, so they come with a pretty big price tag, and that's what he chose to do for FY26. Then I'm going to let him talk about the second item on this slide, because I'm not in fire and I am not exactly sure what these do. So go ahead, John.
So one of the main pieces of equipment that we use on our medical calls is our monitor. And so monitors have really, in the last 25 to 30 years, have advanced by quite a bit. Since I've been here, we've always used a Physio-Control Life Pack monitor. So that's the thing that we can watch the tracing of the heart. It's the thing that we use to shock them if they need it. But they've also expanded in. We do blood pressures with them. We do pulse oxes with them. We measure your carbon dioxide when we're doing ventilations for the patient, so we can monitor that. So the ones that we have right now are the same brand, but they're, depending on when we bought them, we kind of spaced them in. They're anywhere from 10 to 12 years old now, and what we find in those, they're still working, but these companies like to phase them out. They give them a 12-year working lifespan, and so how they start to kind of gig us on the other side is that from now on, they raise that annual maintenance cost every year that keeps going up to keep them up and going. What this newer one will give is a smaller, lighter model too, that we can carry a little bit easier, and it has a lot more integration that will automatically transfer information to our reporting systems. And so that's kind of the basic of that, and we plan on those. They come, it says with initial 7-year life. We would look at those to go a 10 or 12-year lifespan like the other ones did. It's just that when we buy them, they'll come up front, they'll come with the 7-year maintenance and upkeep program already paid in with that cost. And we get 7 of them, so that gives us, as we carry them on our 4 ambulances. Like I said, we're running 3 all the time now. We have that 4th that we can run occasionally. And then we have on each fire apparatus, so on the ladder truck and on the engine, they each have one. And then we have one more that we carry on our squad, so that sometimes we'll will jump into the squad either under busy situations or if we just need to take it out into the county when we want something smaller, or just to have that extra piece of equipment during busy times and or if one's broken and unusable.
What will you do with those ones that you currently have?
We're getting trade-in value on those, so that's part of the deal too. Yeah.
That's
No,
probably,
it does not include the trade-in value.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I had a feeling that's what you were going to ask. Okay, any more questions? Okay, moving on. We've got an expedition power chair, there's 4, and I'm going to go back to this slide real quick. So we do have 7 budgeted. John and I did talk. Again, if the operational budget doesn't quite work out where we want it, we might cut that down. In this next slide, we've got 4 and 2 with this equipment here, and again, we could go 2, we could go 1, 3, it just depends on where the operational budget falls out, so.
And so for some clarification there, if we were opt to have to try to trim things out, we would actually try to trim all of these out and try to make sure that the technology is all the same on the monitors, but at the end of the day, we've got to work with what we got, so
Yep.
we will definitely do that. These are 2 other Stryker products, which is also who sells the Physio Control. The first is the stair chairs. We've been using these stair chairs for quite a while. They kind of took over the market about 15, 20 years ago and made a pretty exceptional product. The ones we have are spread over several years. A couple of them are as old as 16 years old, and they have tracks like what you see on the back. And so what these are made to do is primarily they originally developed to bring people downstairs. They didn't work as well to bring them up, but we did. And a few years back, they added the tracks to them so that it assists you by friction, basically, to help bring you down without lifting them. These are actually powered, so it still takes contact of 2 people with them, but the whole chair will do the work of lowering or going upstairs either way with patients. And so what we find is our patients are getting heavier every year. And Belton is quite the place. We have a lot of split level homes. So, essentially 80% of what we go into, somewhere we have stairs going up or down. And so what this is going to do is it's safer for the patients. We'd grab them up by the arms and legs and carry them around. So first is patient safety. And then the second with this is, the potential of reducing back injuries and wear and tear on our backs, bringing people up and down stairs. So. The second part is the Lucas. We have some of these. This is just an additional. When we originally bought them, we bought 2 for 2 ambulances, and we had 1 extra one that we carried in the chief's vehicle. And so since we've added ambulances, we're trying to make sure we have these devices in each of them. They allow us to do continuous, nonstop CPR compressions on patients, which has been, found to be very beneficial. And through different studies, they found that we kind of stop paying attention. We'll switch out and we'll stop doing compressions where this machine never gets tired. It'll do them the whole time while we're doing other skills and and treatments on the patient.
Any other questions on this one? Okay. Moving on to police. So the first thing we've got on the slide is the evidence room. I believe Scott did put this in the budget last year. We did move it. This will enable them to secure storage. Right now, they don't really have anything like this, and they've got to be able to separate their evidence. The next thing on the slide is a forensic drying cabinet. This is something that was also in last year's budget. I do believe that we purchased one this year. Is that correct, Scott?
It was 2 years ago.
It was 2 years ago. Okay. So does anybody have any questions about these first 2 items for the PD? These are pretty self-explanatory. Nope. Okay, PD is also asking for some building improvements. Right now we've got replacing the tile and carpet. It's pretty worn out, you can see in the pictures down there, and also adding some ventilation in the locker rooms and the workout area. Next, we've got some radios. We've got 57 budgeted. That will give one to each officer. We've got laptops, vehicles also. We've got 3 of those budgeted. The current units are really at the end of their warranty, so we do need to replace these. Yes, sir.
On radios,
Mhm.
does that, so I guess twofold question. First part is, so what happens, I see the old ones are no longer being supported, but is there trade-in value, or like what happens with that?
Basically, we use those radios all the way past the warranty, and Motorola is one of those companies. When they get to the end of life, they do not supply those parts. What we'll probably end up holding on to some of them, just in case we had an event where we want to integrate with BEMA. So we give those radios that might fail anyway to them. We try to keep our emergency radios under warranty and parts available. But when those radios get to the point to where there's more than $500 worth of repairs that need to occur with them, the manufacturer just says trash them. And so these radios, they are integratable with the new radio system. They are programmable, so every time the officer pushes the talk, it has an alias where it tells them that that is the officer. We also have GPS on them in case they got into a fight or we can't reach them, we can find them. And then there's an emergency button that's also on there as well. And all of these radios have the availability of being encrypted. And so when it comes to first responder radios, police and fire, we try to keep those radios as close to in warranty as possible because lives depend on them. And once they get outside that warranty or they're no longer serviceable, they could fail and officers or firefighters end up not getting calls, and we don't want that.
And then I'm just curious, so is this one of those pieces of equipment where they get assigned and they have their specific radio, or is it there's a bank of radios that come and they, pick it up when they start their shift kind of a thing?
Yeah, the signing them out was a thing that was probably pre-2000s. These are programmable to the officer. And so, like I said, every time they push a button, even if they don't even talk on the radio, it comes up on a dispatch channel that it was this officer. And when they go on shift, it tells them, they sync it so they know the district, they know the car they're in, they know all that information, and they can even pull up the GPS location where that portable actually activated.
Thanks.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear half of, a quarter of what you said when it said, what do you do with the old radios other than trash? You give it to who?
Sometimes we're able to sell those back. It's very interesting because the market is to ship them to other countries because they're no longer serviceable in the United States and parts are not available. But you're talking pennies on, for thousands of dollars that we spent on the front end. But we'll try to keep as many of those as possible for BEMA.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes, we even use those at other agencies when we had VIP visits, like we're going to integrate with Secret Service because of a VIP is in town, the vice president, the president, or some type of event. We can pass those out to where we can talk, but it's usually those are used for non-emergency, personnel.
Okay. Next, we've got some patrol cars. We do have some budgeted over the next 3 or 4 years. We've got 4 in the 26 budget, and then we've got some in-car cameras budgeted for some of these vehicles as well.
Are those 4 additional vehicles or are they replacement?
They would be replacement vehicles. We're trying to get more towards a replacement program where we're bringing cars out of service. We are running them longer. We try to keep them close to, to 100,000 miles, below 100,000 miles. Some of our vehicles are 24/7 hot seat cars, which it comes in from the daytime and you got another shift jumping into it. And then it might sit, on days off, but then they grab it again. And so these vehicles are basically just rolling offices. It's becoming more and more common to try to get 5-6 years out of patrol cars. And sometimes it's doable, but there's cars that we got that might be less than that to get driven even more. I should also mention that when we take these cars out of service, sometimes we even give these to other city departments. We pass them down. I know Golf has already asked for a car that's coming out of service.
Any other questions? Okay. No, it won't come with sirens, Jay. Also for the PD, we've got some desktop and or laptop computers, and then some locking storage for the detective SUVs. So if anybody has any questions about those.
Are these different laptops than the laptops that were referenced previously?
Yes, the ones previous were for the cars, these are for their desks.
Okay, but
Yeah,
then also in the cars, it talked about laptops in the cars. I'm confused.
Yeah, the laptops earlier were for the cars that are in the cars.
That are in service now?
Yes, we have laptops in the cars. This was just a general term.
Okay.
We prefer, but the acronym is mobile data terminal in a car. And we thought general language was better. When they're in the vehicles, we're looking at a ruggedized military grade device that can take, the shocks of driving in a patrol car. They do their reports on them. They receive calls through CAD on them. They can even message between cars. They can get access to the Missouri Department of Transportation website. We can pull up licenses. We can see bulletins. We can see people's faces, and they use them in the field to identify people. But it is a ruggedized device, and we prefer GTAC as opposed to what common is across the country, Sony Toughbooks.
And you can see that in the price difference. There's 3 for $16,000 and then 5 for $7,500.
Yes. I was just curious about the 3 different references.
Yep,
So I thought there
absolutely.
was a basis for it, but I wasn't clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd also like to add, when it comes to desktop to computers, laptops, and even with the cars, again, we are not replacing the entire lot one year. We're trying to parcel it out over many years to keep a good stock, so it's not impacting us too heavily.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of piggyback off what Scott's saying, and we're trying to get back in the habit of doing that with everything, all of our vehicles, trying to get back on a regular schedule where one year we don't have, we have 2 million, and the next year we have 500,000. We want to try to, get away from that and be a little bit more balanced year to year, so. Okay, we're still in police, and we've got some upgraded office desks. I've been told that their current furniture was donated by the Department of Ag in 1988, and they have not updated since then. So they're going to try to purchase some new office furniture.
What's the bottom one? I can't, pistol something.
Pistol-mounted optics, PMOs. I'm going to let Scott go into detail about that.
We are trying, like I said before, we're trying to get to the point where we trade out our service weapons included and do like several over many years and transition the department. Most of law enforcement is going to pistol-mounted optics, red dots. It allows the officers to actually concentrate on the subject instead of looking at iron sights. So they're looking downfield and they're interposing the red dot on the target. And so it's a lot easier to train people. especially people that are novice shooters that have never shot before. And so these are current weapons we've had for a number of years, but they don't come with the plates to be interchangeable. And so we are slowly transitioning. We just transitioned our tactical team, and then there was a number of officers that we did in addition to, I think it was 10. And most of those are older veteran officers because we have reading glasses, and it's easier to pick up a red dot. But it's the way that the industry is changing, and it has changed the way that we look at use of force when it comes to law enforcement, because you're actually concentrating on the person, the hands, what's their movement, what are they doing, and then you don't have to take your eyes off of that to try and make it a split second decision.
Okay. We're going to move on to the hotel motel fund. They've got one item in the budget that year, and the wayfinding signage. There's quite a few benefits to having this signage around town, and this is a continuation of what we're currently doing in FY25. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Maybe not related, but the new directory outside of the DMV, it's purple. Do you know what I'm talking about? It'd be cool if they could have matched. I don't know who was in charge of that one, but I just noticed it the other day.
We had a matching one in front of City Hall, but then it had been destroyed with vandalism. Those are actually older directory signs I think that one came from the fire station. And it was owned by DBMSI, and so they just relocated it in front of the fire station.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay. We're going to move on to street, wastewater, and water. So we'll start with street. We've got some beautification in the budget, providing plantings on Markey, 163rd, and Mullen. Street and stormwater preservation, we have this in the budget every year. We've got the sidewalk 80-20 match in again. We've got $60,000 there. That is up for discussion if you guys would like to discuss that. And then the Second Street improvements right here, close to City Hall. We'll be doing some improvements there to the property that we've purchased. Any questions here?
Did anyone take advantage of the sidewalk plan this fiscal year?
We haven't had a single application yet.
Okay. For the plantings, Mullen is a roundabout, correct? The other one's a divided road. 163rd divided road. Markey doesn't have a roundabout, right?
Correct. Excuse me, correct. Those are for plantings in the medians and probably the roundabout.
Okay, that's a very hot topic historically. Trees, no trees.
That's in the roundabout that we own. That's the only one that we own is at Mullen and Cambridge.
I'm just saying, choose carefully because, you know, I don't know what's best practice, and I'm sure you do, or, you know, that'll get sorted out, but we don't want to have to uninstall and I mean, it's just been a mess over by the high school. People are real opinionated about it.
I understand.
I like the trees, but I know how roundabouts work, so.
The 58, all the roundabouts are on 58 are controlled by MoDOT. We made some efforts over the past couple of years to try to make them less attractive to drive through and make them a little more attractive to look at, and none of those options were, every time that we tried to do something like that, MoDOT would say, no, we don't want that, nope, we don't like that. So eventually they said, just do this. And so that's essentially where we are with the roundabouts that are on 58. So since it's a state highway, we don't really have a choice in whether we want to do something else there or not. And I think what Greg's saying is the roundabout at Cambridge and Mullen is not a state highway, so it's within the city. So we do have more say in what we put in there.
I'm just saying there's a lot of people with a lot to say about what goes in there, so.
Of course.
Proceed with caution.
I do want to point out that the Second Street improvements are I think we've talked about when the folks who are building this, the housing behind here, when that comes forth with the actual contract pretty quickly. It's coming. It should be coming any day now. When they came in for DRC after they had won the bid, right? So they submitted the bid for the RFP. They said, here's how much we're going to pay for it. They came into the DRC and we said, okay, well, here's some infrastructure improvements we would like as part of this. They came back and said, well, hey, we're going to need you to take the purchase price down. If you'll recall this conversation, we'll need you to take the purchase price down for us to cover these costs. We said, okay, fine, we'll just cover the costs ourselves and use the price of the sale of the property to help us cover those costs. And so that's what that is. So we'll have revenue coming in to cover those costs and that's for essentially stormwater and for the paving of the alley after everything's done. Don't anticipate it's going to take the whole 150, but that's what we have sitting there for now. I think that their bids were about $100,000 in what they had, and so we'll see how it shakes out. Obviously, we won't spend more money than we need to on that specific project.
On beautification, 163rd just had a bunch of plants already put in, right?
We ended up having to take several out. If you notice, especially like on this last year on the north side of the interstate, those bushes had to be removed, and some of the plantings on the south sides died. We've had 2 years of drought, and it's killed a lot of the plantings that were out there, and so it needs to be redone in a new drought-resistant. It was drought-resistant, but apparently not 2-year drought-resistant way, so that they can live longer and have a better lifestyle.
Okay, I mean, literally, like within the last few months, I thought I saw like.
We did do some plantings out there, but we're trying to come up with a comprehensive plan on how to make them look better and fit throughout the whole city.
Okay. And look, I'm all for beautification, for the record. I'm not, I'm all for us spending money there. I just was confused because of the mention of 163rd.
I noticed the same thing.
So I was just going to mention, we have an internal committee with planning, public works, economic development, and parks that are currently reviewing that. There is an adopted beautification plan from 2014. So we're looking to update that over the next few months, and then we would bring that to council for review before we officially adopted anything and proceeded with any new landscaping.
Okay, sounds good. In regards to the sidewalk match program, I know that there was some discussion about that program maybe not being able to cover the addition of someone wanted to put a sidewalk in, and it would likely cost potentially more than that because of the need for curbs and gutters, etc., involved in that, as we had a lot of extensive discussions about previously. I would potentially, and even knowing that it wasn't utilized, I would potentially be interested in raising that to maybe 100,000 in the future to maybe try and entice somebody to potentially use those funds. That's my 2 cents on that. I would like to see that continued interest in the sidewalks. But, I don't know if I'm alone in that thought, but that's one piece I would like to see. And then the other thought is, since we have that carryover, if you will, I know that we were looking at using some grant money to match funds that we put in, so potentially using that. So my thought is, if it's not used by the residents for a fiscal year, then maybe we can use those funds as a backup to apply for a grant to get more sidewalks. I don't know if that's possible, but I'd also like to venture to, use that way.
I think that it would take a number of years of it not being utilized to get to a scope of us being able to utilize it for a grant purpose and put together an attractive grant proposal, let's put it that way. The 60,000 we have in this year's, assuming that's not going to be used, we will utilize some of it for some pedestrian safety. And one of the things I'm thinking of is like the the crosswalk at Main and Y Highway is one of those things, for instance, that we're looking at going ahead and utilizing this, since it doesn't look like it's going to be utilized by the residents wanting to apply for this program, which, you know, is understandable. That was one of the discussions for using some of that money.
And that's great. I like that ideology there, right? If we're gonna have this money set aside specifically for use for the residents, but if it's not, then I'd say, you know, let's move forward with some improvements or whatever we can do with that fund. And my thought is, if we're gonna use it appropriately in ways that are gonna be for potential sidewalk improvement, then I would encourage us increasing that number from 60,000. My suggestion is 100,000, but, you know, that's my 2 cents.
You know, you're the expert, so I'm just going to throw out something. We say curbs and sidewalks, but we have areas that don't have curbs but have sidewalks. So why do we constantly tie the two together when we still have areas that don't have curbs, they have their little ditches, and still have sidewalks?
Most of those were built before ADA came into effect, and so now that there's ADA, it actually gets very specific on how that sidewalk has to be built. And so when we get into that, there's an exact height that has to be above the roadway and everything. So it really gets tied into the curb and into the road. And then when you get to the place where it actually crosses the road at intersections, you'll actually have to have a curbed and stormwater system there to make it work. That's basically why.
I'm kind of like Alex. If we haven't spent it, can we not roll this over so that at the start of this next year, we have 120,000 versus, you know, we didn't spend the 60 that we had last time. If we roll that into the 60 that we've got up in proposed, then we start out with 120. And, you know, I can see that you could, I don't know how to advertise it better. You know, I'm looking at how we could get it out there, but I could also see that $60,000, you'd burn through that pretty quickly. You know, so can we roll it over and have funds, you know, like you haven't used your points and.
I'd like to explore the city manager's idea. If we don't use it for sidewalks, then we should look at other safety items like crosswalks.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to.
And say,
Yeah.
you can get on a list, and at the end of the year, you know, we'll vote or however we're going to do it, but decide a fair way to use it on other items. And we're also still not using the proper name for this, the Powell Project.
It's the
we
Powell
all agreed
Project.
that
Yes,
was going to
that's
be
right.
it.
And-
That's why no one's going for it.
That's right, and I walk in a part of town that has no sidewalks, and I also cross over Y Highway and Main Street, so I would like to have, you know, that flashing light, so I don't have, at least they'll notice me when they run me down. But you know, it would be nice to have, I don't know how to advertise it better, I don't know how to make it more available, but I also could see that $60,000 wouldn't build you many sidewalks either. So, I just.
Sidewalks are a difficult thing for us to fix, right? I mean, you know, obviously as we build out moving forward, it's a lot easier for us to address because we just put it in as part of the bare minimum that you have to do when you're doing a new development, and so that's fine. But how do you retrofit sidewalks, right? And so, you know, and for instance, there are some neighborhoods in our community that, you know, people were able to purchase their properties for a lower rate, and part of the reason is because the cost of the infrastructure wasn't built into that property at any point, right? There was never any real stormwater infrastructure, curbs, sidewalks, the whole 9 yards, and so it's hard for us, you know, and again, it still is in our code that it's the property owner's responsibility to do sidewalks if they want sidewalks or to maintain sidewalks, the whole 9 yards. And so it's a tough nut to crack. I understand the need for it. I think everybody understands the need for it. I think everybody understands the desire for more sidewalks where there aren't any. It's hard for us to effectively make it, you know, without, you know, $60,000 a year for looking at the $27 million need we would need for sidewalks. It seems like that's like, you know, throwing a water balloon at a house fire, you know. I mean, I don't know how else would you.
especially since it's tied to having to have curbs. You know, you just can't build a sidewalk. I mean, now you have
Right.
to have all this other thing
The infrastructure, yeah.
to, I can understand why someone does, now, unless something's broken in front of their house, but trying to get a new sidewalk in, it's impossible with $60,000.
Well, and what did we say that, back in, before I was a real person, I remember that they talked about that the amount of money that you had to have just to start applying for the grants was significant, right? I mean, it's a lot of money,
Well,
correct?
these grants are competitive, and so for us to put together an application, it has to have some effectiveness to it, so it has to have some scale to it, and so, yeah, I mean, we're talking big dollars if we're going to be successful to get some grant money to come in and help us do some projects.
But, like, throw a number out there.
Well, it depends on the project. A smaller project, we would probably include a neighborhood or at least a number of streets in a neighborhood, and you're talking, you know, a couple $1 million most likely for that to take effect. You know, of total spend. You know, and so I mean, maybe $1 million from our perspective, and maybe we can get $1 million out of the feds. I mean, you're talking 7 figures.
And when I talked to you, Greg, about just the sidewalks in front of my house that would connect to nothing, $60,000 won't put them in front of my house.
No.
Yeah.
And this program was really not for putting in new sidewalks. It was
It's
for
for
maintaining
repair, isn't it?
existing
Yeah.
ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
repairing
Yeah.
existing
Yeah.
ones.
Okay.
Okay, so
But-
just, go ahead, Alex.
Sorry but just on the idea of rolling over, even if we use some of that for, you know, something safety related, to, especially related to sidewalks, like a crosswalk, something, assuming that doesn't use all 60,000, rolling that over then to the next year gives us, you know, a bigger pot. I almost like that idea as an enhancement to what I was suggesting, even a little better, because then, you know, over time, all of a sudden we might have, not all of a sudden, obviously 5 years later, we have, you know, $500,000 sitting in there, and suddenly that's enough money, we might be able to actually do something, right?
If we
can
want
I-
to take that kind of approach, I would almost recommend, rather than trying to sit it into something like this 80/20 program, which we've seen very little desire from the public to take advantage of, maybe we just create a long-term, even if it's a small program, you know, we can do it as a 5-year, we're doing a 5-year CIP as it is now. We could put $100,000 a year into that, and by the 5th year, we have $500,000, and try to program it that way to where by the 5th year, we can make that improvement. I mean, I would recommend that if that's where we want to go with this, we go down that path rather than try to shoehorn it into a program that's really not been very attractive, successful, utilized, whatever you want to call it.
Well, because this isn't a program, this is just an expense account. So, I mean, if we're gonna start a program, to Joe's point, we would need to actually start a program where we're gonna build that up, and it's not just, we're gonna roll over the expense, because it doesn't just sit there.
Okay, I'm sure that everything you're saying makes perfect sense from a financial perspective, and I'm with you. We can call it a program or whatever. I guess my point is, though, I'd like to, you know, kind of have that ideology there, and I'd like to, I guess I'm proposing a program then, because I would like to see us make some progress towards this, because if we don't, we're never gonna get that 27 million. That's not gonna show up overnight, and we gotta have something, we gotta try something, right?
Ken, this may be completely left field, but I've been known to go there sometimes. Several years ago, we voted in to replace the water lines. And so how far out does that sales tax go to, and then where are we at in that process? Because eventually I'll get around to something with it.
The sales tax it goes to perpetuity until the voters decide to take it off, because the sunset was taken off of it, and I believe 2019, was that right? 2021?
21, I
I wasn't
think.
here, but,
So where are we at on the work on water lines?
so we are. I don't have it in this plan right here. We are still in discussions about exactly how, so originally, they were gonna finance that. We ran some numbers and decided it would not be fiscally responsible for us to do that, because I believe it was 60 million that was approved. Well, we can't do $60 million worth of work in 3 years. We can't do 30, we can't do 20. So instead of financing it, we were gonna do a pay-as-you-go. So we are still, Greg and Joe and I are in discussions about how much can we do every year and use the sales tax to pay for it and save, $600,000-$700,000 a year in interest, and actually put that towards the project, so.
Because doesn't the pay-or-plan go, make it 25 years, 30 years to do the water line? Isn't that one of the reasons why we went to the sales tax? Because the pay-as-you-go plan was going to be drawn out so long?
Greg, if you want to respond to that, you can, but, so we cannot tear up the entire city at once? To do that much work at one time is just not, it's not feasible. And I'll let Greg kind of take that.
So we did a couple projects to kind of test it out, and so we did about $3.5 million the first year, and that was not using the money from the sales tax. That was using money from the water fund, and it did take us about a year to do $3.5 million worth of work. And so we, in order to do a sizable amount, you're talking about 10 different projects going on at the same time all over the city, which is just too much work going on at one time. And so we have decided just to kind of look at doing one project per year and just march it through the city to get it done. And yes, it will take more time to do it that way. It'll take 10 years to do it, to do $30 million worth to get a majority of the lines that we need, the first group of lines to stop a lot of the water line leaks. It will take longer, but also in the long run, 30, 40, 50 years from now, not all the lines are going to go bad in the exact same year too. And so we're kind of looking for the future too, whoever's ever going to be sitting in these seats in the future, not to have the same exact problem.
We already took it on the chin recently when we had 2 streets projects going on at once. And that was not done purposely, obviously, and that was, one of them was a TDD project. One of them was our city project utilizing MARC funds, MARC and state and federal funds. And just because of timing, it happened to hit both at once. And so I think there's a lot of, I just don't think that the residents would appreciate having more than, a couple projects going on in a year at one time, and having everything torn up at once. And it'd be difficult for us to program that. It would be difficult for us to get that all designed and the contractors' availability and as it is now, when we were bidding a contract, we've got a few contractors that are bidding on it, but if, I wouldn't expect us to be able to even program $60 million worth of improvements in 1 or 2 years. I don't think it would, I don't think we could find the work or the workers, the contractors to get that done. So there's a lot of reasons why it makes some sense to do it this way, and I understand that the public voted for the debt to do it a certain way. It just doesn't pencil out, and it just doesn't. When you're looking at it from a logistical standpoint, it just doesn't work out quite as efficiently as it sounds in theory.
Brett, I agree with that sound. This feels like new information.
Yep.
And it kind of does conflict with the messaging that we supported in terms of this project. The mayor specifically, that was a big part of his plan. So at the risk of derailing this meeting to talk about something historical and what the plan is going forward,
Okay.
I think some of us feel a little caught off guard by this change that maybe hasn't been communicated.
Okay. I've had some of these conversations in our one-on-ones, but okay.
But I can't go there now.
Maybe it was not understanding what was being said. That's fair.
Yeah, again, this is maybe not pertinent to the presentation tonight, but.
Fair enough.
So any other questions?
Well, we all know that we need sidewalks.
Yes, yes.
We all agree on that we need some creative way to have sidewalks.
So some other items in street, we've got a crack seal machine, a Bobcat boom mower, and a mini excavator, some attachments for the mini excavator. Does anybody have any questions about those 3 pieces of equipment?
Will we get to see these machines at the Public Works Day?
Absolutely. So it's same basic thing. So if you see something digging, sometimes it has a little thing on the other side so you can grab onto something.
So that's what it's talking about.
Yep.
I just was curious.
Okay, continuing on with street, we've got a diamond mower for the Bobcat, a Bobcat planer, a 72-inch sweeper attachment, a hot sea pressure washer, and a concrete form truck. It is very exciting stuff. Any questions on this slide? And I can email this out to everybody as well. Wastewater. We've got an aeration disc and pump, a clarifier. We'll continue the I&I program, and then the wet well rehab for the Fairway Lift Station.
Can you, I don't remember this. Could you explain the wet well rehab? What?
So for every lift station, it has to have a wet well. So basically, as fluid comes in, and if you can't pump it all out, you have to have a well to hold the product that can't be popped out.
Okay.
That's a nice way of putting it.
And remind me, I know we talked about the I&I. Remind me where specifically that's, because I think our plan was in some specific areas.
So this area for I&I, we're going to go north of 58 and west of Westover and try to seal that area. We're trying to reduce as much water that's going down to Park Avenue as we can.
You'll recall this, the program we did this year, or the money we budgeted this year, we did over in West Belton. And that's, we think we've seen quite a bit of improvement in the backup situation that we were seeing in those areas. I don't think it's fixed necessarily 100% in a few instances, but I think it's definitely decreased the amount of times we're having issues with backups.
Any other questions? We'll move on. So we've got a skid steer for the plant, and air digesters for the lift stations. We're going to replace some samplers for the lab, and then Greg has given me his trucks with numbers, and I told him be prepared to explain exactly what type of trucks are going to be purchased, because they are all different price ranges. So does anybody have any questions on this slide?
Wait. So on that truck thing, is that multiple trucks up there, or is that one truck?
Nope,
'Cause I
it's
assume
not
that's
321 trucks. It's
Okay.
truck 321.
And I assume for that price, that's one truck.
That's correct.
Okay.
Here's some more trucks.
Now it's making more sense.
Yes. So we are in water now. And we've got 1, 2, 3 trucks, all different price ranges. So if you have any questions about what type of truck that is, Greg can answer that for you. We also have 4 water towers that are going to need yearly maintenance that we're going to budget for.
Can you
Yes,
just go
sir.
ahead and explain
The trucks?
the trucks, so we don't have to ask one at a time?
So the trucks that are like $40,000 are 150s, and then you get into trucks that are $80,000. We're buying 350s, and trucks that are $120,000 are 550s. So they're different sizes based on how we use them. So the bigger trucks can be flatbed trucks. They also hold tools and have toolboxes behind them. And you see, they're the ones that have like dualies in the back instead of single wheels.
And what are you going to do with the current trucks?
sell them.
Okay.
And that does not include the trade-in price.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question about yearly maintenance on the water towers. Not every city property has yearly maintenance listed in the capital budget. Is there a reason why something that we anticipate yearly would be considered a capital expense where otherwise it wouldn't?
So if an item is over $5,000, we're gonna put it in the capital budget. So like just maintenance that's under 5,000, we'll put in the operations budget. So
Okay.
if that, does that kind of clarify?
It's just
And then- and-
interesting that like, other than an HVAC and a trash containment, City Hall doesn't require more than $5,000 in maintenance.
Oh, I would say that it probably
Yeah.
does. It's just, are we going to continue to keep the building, I'll just say polish the turd, continuing to do that? I'll just say that. 'Cause it needs a lot of work.
Okay, back to water towers. Water Tower 3 requires significantly more capital for yearly maintenance. Is there any particular reason?
So every water tower is on a cycle, and so I believe water tower 3 is getting painted. And so
Okay.
that's where the price goes up. But they do everything for us. They create a long-term plan for us over a 10-year plan of what maintenance needs to be done. We drain every water tower every year. They go through, they clean them, and make any repairs that need to be made. So they have a definite maintenance plan to them.
Where is Water Tower 3?
That'd be the one over there in Cunningham.
I don't know if this is fact or not, but I heard that at least at one point, one of our water towers was the largest capacity in the state of Missouri. Is that true, and is it still true?
I have no idea.
I've been telling people that's true.
For what it's worth, I heard that as well. I don't know if it's still true, but I had heard that at one point that was definitely true.
Did
it
you
was
hear
one
it
of
from
the
me?
newer ones. No, it wasn't from you.
I couldn't tell you it's not true.
Okay, sorry, unrelated.
So wait, I have to ask this question. So the Tate Stevens one is being repainted. Are we putting brown couch up there?
Yes.
I know what you're talking.
I'm making a joke, but in all seriousness, what if we're repainting it? Is it repaint to the same exact, or is there any change?
We haven't discussed that yet, but I
Okay.
assume that would be changed.
Okay.
And I have a question about vehicles now. When they trade that in and that money, does that go back to the general fund, or how does that work?
It'll go in the fund that it came out of.
Okay.
Yep. Any other questions?
So just
Uh-huh.
so I can capture something in my head. When you say sell, what, on, let's say, one of the $120,000 truck, so the one you're selling, you think you might get what out of it? Just,
Kind of depends on how old they are. Some of our trucks are 20 years old, and so it depends on the auction and what they get. Sometimes we get $5,000. Sometimes we get $15,000 for a truck.
so we're talking $5,000-$10,000 off of those figures, basically.
It'll
Correct.
go into revenue.
Okay. So the outlay is going to be a little bit less, but not much.
Yeah, the net, but you will see that price hitting the expense account.
I'm
Okay.
sorry to do this.
No, you're
Okay, according to a press release on the city website, that water tower is the largest water tower by volume in the state of Missouri, although this was posted on April 1st, 2019, so now I don't know what to believe.
I had
I mean, it sounds great.
It sounds like you have homework then.
I'm actively. All right,
I-
sorry, thank you.
I believe that it was the first of its kind, and that's why it was so large, from what I recall, and that there was another one made somewhere that was either equal size or slightly bigger or something, so it's not anymore. That's what I'm recalling, but yeah, I don't know, especially since it was posted on April 1st.
There's also a water tower calendar if you want to buy one of those too.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, we're going to move on to golf, if no one has any more questions about water. So for golf in FY26, we've got some kitchen renovations and improvements, and I'll let Jay go into that in a little bit more detail. We've got an irrigation system that we need to update, and then some cart path repairs. So I'll let Jay kind of speak to those.
Yeah, so the kitchen renovation improvements, for those of you that have been out to the golf course, so we have a 6x6 cubed walk-in cooler in our kitchen area, and it basically takes up the majority of the kitchen area. So our idea would be is obviously as the golf course is much busier, we've expanded our play by almost 50% over the last few years, but we're still looking to expand even further. So we have a room next to our kitchen that is not utilized very often because it's the way it's designed. It's kind of a private area, but it's not super big. So we would utilize part of that area to build a new walk-in cooler. Right now we have what we call dry storage and cold storage, but that cold storage fills up rather quickly. So we move product every day from the dry storage into the cold storage. So for example, refreshments get delivered, they have to go into the dry storage. They don't get to stay cold. So we have to move them every night. We move cases of product into the cold storage and yada, yada, yada. So we would look to build an area that would be big enough that we could just have the delivery, just take the cold product and keep it in the cold storage. And then utilize the room a little bit differently. So that would open up our kitchen area to do more items. So when we're having tournaments, and Greg was fortunate enough to come by one day when we had back-to-back tournaments. So he came by to see how we do our food prep for tournaments. So he can attest that it's a small area, but it'll be nice to look at that renovation. The irrigation control system is a little bit confusing, but just simply put, there's a computer system that runs the irrigation system. It is so old it runs on DOS, for those of you that understand DOS as a terminology. But it is 26 years old, and it was put in when the irrigation system was put in. The new product would basically be to replace that computer control system, and it would be a laptop or an iPad of some sort. It's mobile. So, I mean, you could access it through your phone. You could access it anywhere in the world that you happen to be because it runs off of the cloud. And it would also replace the satellites that are throughout the golf course. So we have, I think, 16 satellites that control the irrigation system as a whole, and they're located on the golf course property. So it would be the control unit and those satellites. Now, should something happen in the future, we can take those with us wherever we want to go. They're the most up-to-date recent technology, so should we need to do something different, we can take those with us. But that's what the irrigation system control is. Besides the fact that we're a 26-year-old time bomb, as our irrigation specialist has told us, but truthfully, to be able to have the ability to program different programs that we don't currently have right now. So if we only need 5 minutes at this particular sprinkler head versus right now the system only allows you to do 20, we could go in individually and correct some of those programs. And so it would be a savings to the golf course and to our water efforts on down the road to be able to use less water annually is another goal of that. And then the cart path repairs, truthfully, we have an ongoing need to repair cart paths throughout the golf course. We have $100,000 set aside in this year's budget. I don't know that we'll actually get to that $100,000 this year, but after talking with staff and Joe in particular, we're trying to put a master plan together so that we can identify that in a more of a long-term 5-year CIP for you all to look at. So this is really just going to probably be more likely the money that we already have budgeted this year being rolled over, and then completing that master plan for you all to kind of see and look at from that standpoint.
I know that you said you don't think you'd get to the 100,000 for cart repairs. I mean, is there like an estimate that you might guess? Is that like half of that you might use, or a quarter of it, or?
For this year,
Yeah.
it's hard to say. I'm trying to reach out to some different, the asphalt plants are going to start shutting down here pretty soon. So that's the big negative, is I don't know when they may fire back up. So right now I'm trying to get an overlay price. So I want to use the existing base and not have to rip it out, but more just come in, and if we could do a 1 or 2 inch overlay on top of the existing cart path structure, but provide that smooth surface, that's really what I'm aiming for.
But how expensive is something like that?
That's, again, and Brian may be able to go off of this. I don't know if they're doing overlays or brand new. It's very similar to a trail. So the expense is really having to not, have a specialized machine that's 8 feet wide that can go into terrain that you couldn't get a truck into. So there's the labor intense part of it is probably the most expensive part. So I would love to get you a linear foot price, and that's kind of what we're talking about. And that would be basically what Joe is asking for, is in that master plan. If we can figure out what the price is per linear foot, then we would know how much cart path we could do on an annual basis based on that price.
All right, I'll hold off until we have some more details then.
Yeah, that one's kind of like, I think, like you said, using this year's money is unlikely. I don't say it's not going to happen. So, but yeah, it'd be nice to have that to maybe repair some of the higher damaged or more damaged areas, or maybe a specific problem area we may have, while we're trying to get to a point of where we have a complete, replacement plan.
And just to quickly answer or follow up with that, the original 100,000 for this particular year was to do an overlay around the clubhouse. So our cart staging area, there's a staging area behind the clubhouse. There's some cart path between the two, also between the putting green area, and then there's a cart staging area in front of our cart storage building. So everything around the clubhouse was what was designated for that 100,000, based on talking to the asphalt experts that gave us a price of this is what it would be to do an overlay of this area. So.
Any other questions? Okay, we will finish golf up with the greens mower and a range cart. Any questions about these two pieces of equipment? Nope. Okay, we are going to finish up with some capital projects. We've got 5. 4 of these projects are going to be utilizing the bond funds that were approved a couple of years ago now. We are waiting on this FY23 audit to be presented to you guys next Tuesday, and then we will carry on with that process definitely into 25 now. So again, 4 of these 5 projects that we have presenting to you tonight are going to be part of the bonds that we're going to sell. So the first project on the list is Larkspur for $1.9 million. It'll be utilizing city funds and federal funds, STP funds, so this will be the only project that's not going to utilize the bond funds. Markey Parkway for 4.8. It'll be Fed funds and bond funds of 1.8. Street and curb reconstruction, we've got 7.7 that we're going to use bond funds for in 26. Any questions on this slide?
For the street and curb, do you know what streets you're?
Yes, we have a list of those.
I know you prioritized all.
It's a very long list. I've looked through it.
We'd be glad to send those out to everybody so you guys can, and we'll make it
No,
public.
I knew he had it. I just.
And the last 2 projects on this list are Hargis Gardens. So we'll be utilizing all the bond funds for that project, and then North Cass Parkway, TDD, Cass County, and the remainder will be bond funds to wrap that project up. Any questions on these two projects? Well, that completes my 15-minute presentation for you tonight. Only an hour late.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions or items to discuss?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
I have nothing.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question?
Well, there we go. Yes.
Brian's been very nice sitting back there and has, everyone else has talked but him. And so, do you want to say anything about what you got upcoming with the parks, so that,
The reason Parks was not included in tonight's presentation is because they're still honing in their capital budgeting and they haven't fully vetted it through the park board. And so we thought it'd be premature to start throwing projects up here to the council when the park board hadn't even vetted it yet. And so we'll just include that as part of the operational budget. We'll throw the parks capital as part of that on January 28th, I believe.
I just didn't know if he had something he wanted to say.
He's welcome to speak. I just didn't want to let you know what's going
He's the only
on.
one that hadn't talked.
And we do have all of his projects. Again, Brian was on time, turning in everything in. We just didn't want to present it, so.
All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Gotta do the
I make a
first.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.